Well, hello, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So we've got some really cool stuff on this channel, you know, from the sublime to the ridiculous tech from the 1970s and the 80s, and some great old boom boxes and 8-track players, personal stereos, all that kind of stuff. But I saw this old thing on eBay recently, and it was looked really unloved, and I'd never heard of Ultra, to be honest. And it's a radio cassette player made in Japan. And but what sort of caught my eye as well is that well, actually I wanted it for spares, is the truth be told, because I've probably got a need for these switches somewhere else. And I saw this dirty, tired, broken old thing on eBay, and I noticed though that it is actually sort of distributed by Thorn, and I thought, well, it can't be that bad, can it really? So anyway, it started at 99 pence, and I thought, well, do you know what? It might need a service, and the radio might not work, and all the rest of it. But actually, let's just see what good value we can actually get for less than £1. So I've got it here now, and the plan is really just to spend a day going through, see if we can get it to work, give it a service, give it a good clean, and see what we can do with this 99 pence machine. So first things first is I'm just going to plug it in on the side there into the mains voltage. So just bear with me, we've got the shaky camera while I do that. So right, let's have a look what we've got. So we've got tone. If I set the tone somewhere in the middle, volume barely on for a moment, radio off. Okay, on. Good. So we've got radio. Hello. Now let's just see if we can do something with this aerial. Okay, let me just bring this aerial up slightly with one hand. A little bit stiff, but we'll sort that later. Okay, good. So the main thing is the aerial itself is intact, look, and we've got the tip present as well, so that's always good. You'd be amazed how many radios have that broken. Let's tune this in. Okay, so it seems like he says, I think, I'm just going to roll this on the floor, actually, a bit easier.
Doors, van sliding doors. It's got a car being adjusted.
Good. So we've got a nice clear sound. And what I also noticed, actually, in the evening, is that if I can find it, the tuning light actually does light up. So it's got a signal strength indicator actually within there as well, which is really nice, actually. So you can do a, there it is. Look, you can do a sweep and find a nice strong channel. It's really good. So actually that's kind of cool. Right, anyway, let's go and see if the tape works. That'll be the next thing. So we'll just eject that, and I'll just go and fetch a tape. One moment. Just reaching over the top there. So we'll put this in, and hopefully, there we go, the mechanism works. Right, what do we hear? Anything at all? Is that radio off? No, not sure. Okay, good. So there we go. Okay, good. So the tape works. Rewind. Stop. Play. And again, just turn it up again. Yep. Stop. Fast forward. Okay, now again, it's one of these where the fast forward doesn't lock in position, but that's not the only one that does this. It's quite a common thing, I think, from the period. So that's fine, and it does work. It sounds like it might be dragging a tiny bit. Hard to tell at the moment, but in any event, we'll have a look at the back, we'll crack it open. So basically, I think she just needs a darn good clean. Have a look inside, see what we can do with it, maybe change a belt if we need to, and polish it up and see what we can do with our 99 pence radio cassette. Oh, and just before we go on this one, I did already just check that the different wavelengths work as well, so that's good.
Literally rushed off it.
So we know all the radio works in the different wavelengths, but you might notice that the part is a bit scratchy.
What did it sound? It's the one
and a bit noisy. So we'll sort that from the inside. Okay then, good stuff. So here we go. So first thing we want to do is just to get to the back of this now. So there's looks like 1, 2, 3 screws there, and there's probably one, yeah, one looks like inside the battery compartment. There's a couple more in there, but they may or may not be related to this back cover at this case. Just wanted to say as well, look at the condition of the little battery retaining sponges. So they've still got some give in there. It's really super clean actually on the back. So I think it's probably been left out on a shelf or something like that probably. Just got dirty, got grimy. Oxidization creeps in, of course, into all the switches, which is what then starts to make them play up. The belts perish on the tape, so eventually they start to just give up with age anyway. Now you'll notice that the screws, or you may or may not notice, one of those is a little machine screw, and one is more like a plastic type screw. So we'll keep those, make sure they go back in the right places later. You often find that on the back of these radio cassette players, you'll get a mixture of screws, because some go, for example, directly into the circuit board. So some go through and retain the back plate to other mounting plates within the unit, and some just tend to go straight through into the opposing plastic parts. So just keep a note on where the different screws come from. So basically we've got 3 the same and 1 different, so that's okay. Right, let's see if we can just pull this off. We should find that the antenna is probably just linked by 1 cable to the board, which it is there. So that's this one. I'll just pull off of here now onto the spade. There we go. All right. Yeah, so that's good. That's nice and clean inside there. There's no broken plastic posts. We often get that issue. The antenna's all intact. That's fine. No issues at all with that. That's fantastic. So we'll put that to one side, and basically we'll just give this a good clean and a polish later. Okay, onto the main event then. There's not too much going on in here. It's fairly straightforward. The ferrite rod there for your for the radio actually looks quite clean, to be fair. Nothing too crazy. Little pancake, or at least a nice flat little speaker there. Transformer. Now here's your motor. Now, oh gosh. Well, there you go. Okay, so there's the belt. And I did say just now it felt like it was sounded like it might be slipping or dragging a bit. There's barely any tension on that. In fact, you may or may not notice that as I press this side of the belt, it goes around the pulley there, and there's the other bit. But you may see that there's actually movement on both sides when I do that, which means there's too much slack really. Yeah, and if you move the flywheel, yeah, it's not too bad, because if you move the flywheel, you see, just there, then this pulley is moving, but just about. So I think it's a matter of time. So we'll replace that belt, I think. Right, anyways, enough of this nonsense. Let's get on and start doing some work. Okay, so not too many things have to come out really. I want to just put some cleaner inside this switch. If you remember, we said that there was a bit of a crackle. So it's not necessarily within the switch itself. If you're ever maintaining these, often just spraying cleaner down the front doesn't really do much, because that's more of an actuator. The actual switch itself tends to be inside on the board, so that's the part you need to clean. So we'll do that. I'll go and get some contact cleaner and we'll get some in there. So I'm just going to spray a little bit of contact cleaner inside here. Now they can be fairly sealed units and quite tricky, but I do notice, you might not see it from the camera, but I can actually see, the inside of the mechanism there. So I reckon just giving that a clean inside there will do wonders. Also, you've got to be super careful because can you see how close the antenna wire is there? Well, for the coil. So you've got to be careful not to dislodge or damage any of those. But anyway, that's good. That's better. I'll just spray a tiny bit down the other side as well. Belt and braces while we're here. There we go. Not much to see here when you do this really. It's just making sure everything's in the right place. Also, what we'll try and do, again, I'm not sure how well you'll see that on the camera, but the potentiometers, so the actual pots just at the other side of these controls, they weren't too scratchy, to be honest. They didn't appear to be making any horrible noises. But again, it won't do any harm. Just to work a little bit of cleaner in there whilst we're here. And just run those back and forward a bit to clean the internals of the potentiometer. That's always a fair shout. There's some really nice resistance on them actually. They feel really solid still. So they're actually nice quality units. Okay, well that's the cleaning bit done. That should already help. And I might just actually plug it in now and just check to make sure that's done the job. Okay, so I've just plugged it back in and reconnected the antenna very briefly just to make sure everything works now. So put the radio back on. There we go, that's silent, that's back on without any clicking, that's nice. And long wave. Try and find some kind of long wave as well, if we can. There we go, and FM. Yeah. So again, no real clicking from there, that's lovely. Also what's nice is although there wasn't any crackling from the potentiometer from the volume before, now that we've cleaned it out, it's actually a bit more responsive. So you can actually sort of moderate the volume at lower levels better now. Before it was almost like on or off. So that's great, good stuff. Okay, so I think now we'll see if we can get access to the belt, see if we can change the drive belt on the actual cassette mechanism. So a good bet normally is to try and start with the purple screws. They usually are color coded. Now I just want to make sure you use the right screwdriver. I don't want to chew these up. Okay, I just had to run away and get a couple of tools for a minute. I wanted to undo the purple screws, which should normally be fairly easy, but the glue was rather hard, retaining this screw, and the screw itself was rather soft. Net effect of that is it was starting to look like it didn't want to come out, so I did literally just have to run up to the workshop and get some grips just to break the glue contact on that screw. So hopefully now, there she goes. There we go. Right, so the plan is at least that these purple machine screws should come out, and I'm hoping that we can potentially at least peel the circuit board away to give us access to the belt mechanism underneath. So just trying to make a note of where the screws come from. They are all the same. Just trying to tell actually if they feel more like aluminium machine screws rather than steel, which may be why they were a bit reluctant to come out without chewing up. Right, what else have we got here then? Okay. I was just trying to figure out what and where everything else is. Now, clearly we've got some sort of cable tie there, which is going to restrain some of these. Right, I've just gone ahead and now removed those two tiny little machine screws that were visible from inside of the battery compartment originally, and hopefully, yeah, now the whole, right, okay. So if we're careful, and again, I'm just going to peel this connector back as well. Hopefully, okay. What does that give us? Ah, that's not very handy, is it? Right. Just in here then, is the cable for the microwave, the condenser microphone. So yeah, we do technically now have to desolder some wires now. Yeah, unless we can unscrew the microphone itself. So let's just have a look at that. Okay, so we're going to take the microphone off for a minute. I hope we didn't need to, but sometimes it's a necessary evil. Okay, whoops. Right. Okay, so as I say, a necessary evil sometimes. It's not ideal, but there we go. So that's just unpicked for a little moment. So we should now be able, there we go. That gives us better access now. And possibly even a better chance at seeing why we couldn't get that out in the first place. I expect it's only a grommet holding it in. But anyway, not to worry. So, okay, you can probably see now. I'll try and just zoom in. But as you can see all the grot that's built up under there. So again, doesn't do the mechanism any good. And yeah, it certainly doesn't look attractive either. So I'll go and get the vacuum and we'll clean that off, I think. This is a perfect time to clean the heads and stuff as well. So we'll just get a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, as always, and we'll just clean the heads. Not too bad. Now also, interestingly, I noticed that the pinch roller is quite a nice design on this one. I'm just cleaning around here and I'll show you in a second. But yeah, so on a lot of the sort of more modern ones, the pinch roller was really, it was encapsulated and pinched in here and really quite hard to replace if we needed to. Whereas this one's just set in a nice little E-clip, which if I just zoom in, you've got a better chance of seeing it. Tiny little E-clip there, but that just holds the whole pinch wheel on, rather than having a piece of pressed steel that you have to bend out the way to try and replace it or take the whole thing out. But anyway, this one really does look quite brown. It's got a bit of a fair old bit of residue. It's certainly served its purpose over the years. This has been well loved by somebody. It really does have rather a lot of remnants on there of the ferrite coating. So Just going to try and clean some of this away for a minute. So I'll just keep working away until some of that's away. Okay, so I've had a look at just trying to get to the belts, and it would appear that the ones that are really stopping us at the moment, the pinch points, are these three here, the blue, green and black. Now these are from the heads, so unfortunately looks like we're going to have to go ahead now and actually get those off as well. So we'll desolder those, and then we'll be in business. Hopefully we'll be able to actually finally get this PCB off. So first things first, here's the black one. And the green. And the blue. Okay, good. And there they are. Hopefully that'll do the trick. And typically one more as well, which is the negative terminal from the battery. So we'll just wait for this to warm back up again, and hopefully that should be everything. There we go. Right, fingers crossed. Okay, finally. It's not perfect, but the access is definitely better, so at least we can get to the belts now. Just about. It is a bit of a nuisance, this one, I have to say. I've worked on easier ones. They're not generally all kind of desolder jobs like this, but anyway, here we go. Again, wish me luck. Really, the whole board really needs desoldering. It's a real pain, this one, I've got to say. So much for being a quick and easy little job. But let's have a look. No. Of course, I don't have a set of JIS screwdrivers to hand either, which doesn't help. But so we're having to do this a little bit Heath Robinson. But we'll get there. I'm just making the assumption here that this is the this will be the one we need to take off to get to the belt. So we're going to watch the little washer that's going to come with that as well. Okay, good. And indeed the second one, like before. No, that one doesn't want to come out. Right, okay. So this one has the cable clip on it as well, so we're going to have to look out for that when the time comes to put it back on. Right, let's have a look. Wouldn't normally necessarily have to take these off in the entirety. Normally you can lift it and slip and just literally slip the belt off, but there we go. So there is the flywheel. So at least we can give that a bit of a clean. Clean the mating surfaces there for the idler tyre and clean inside the groove for the belt. So we can do that, and also just put a tiny little bit of of grease or lube just on the actual shaft there as well. But What it also will allow us to do, we hope, just clean up the idler tyres as well, make sure that they're all, maybe put some rubber renew just on those, and then that will keep the tyres fresh as well. They weren't slipping before, so that's okay. So here's the old belt. So we'll go and get some rubber renew on the idler tyres and see if we can find a new belt for this. Incidentally, look at the shape of that. That's obviously been in that position for a long time. It's actually got the marking, as it were, for where it went round the small pulley. So it's been sat there for a long time. So you can imagine how this belt has started to deform. It's no wonder there was a bit of warbling going on as that was turning. Okay, so a little bit of isopropyl alcohol now. And we'll just clean the mating surfaces. You can see what's just come off of there already. A tiny bit of rubber renew now. Just onto the wheels, onto the idler tyre. This will just help refresh the wheel and rejuvenate the rubber a little bit. Now, they were working fine, but there's no harm at all in just rejuvenating the rubber. You can actually see some of the gunk that's coming off of there, so it's always a worthwhile exercise. Righty-ho, so we've just put a tiny little bit of machine oil on the shaft of the flywheel there, and hopefully found a belt that will work. Technically it's the wrong profile. It's a square profile, not a round, but I'm hoping we'll be able to get away with that. Also, I just want to, oh my lord, the tiniest washer in the world has to go back on. There we go, back onto the bottom of the flywheel, the capstan there. So we don't want to be losing that. Right, okay. I might actually just pin that with the tiniest drop of oil as well. Can always clean the capstan after, but better to have that stay on there than to fall off. I've already lost it once today. Right, okay, so let's see what we can see. Basically all we've got to do now is put everything back together again. So essentially what we're looking to do is get the flywheel back on. And hopefully get that through there. Okay, we'll get the belt on as best we can. We've got to try and pull this belt now around the flywheel. As I say, it's a bit tricky, this one. Everything's kind of in the way. The whole thing just needs to get off really out of the way, but sometimes you find that with some of these. Some of them you take the back off and the belt's right there saying, hey, come change me please. And sometimes you go, flipping heck, how do I even get to this? So it can be like that sometimes, but here's right, this might take about 3 weeks, so bear with me. Put one end around the the pulley, which I've also cleaned off, by the way, just now. And we're just going to see if we can then try and take the belt itself around the flywheel, almost, and just try and spin that a few times. As I say, it's a square section one, so I need it to try and just settle itself down a little bit if we can, which it looks like it's doing. I've got to try and the flywheel as I say, everything's somewhat in the way on this one. We'll just get that started. And the other one, if you remember, and if we can see, comes through underneath, because it did actually hold the cable tie as well. And again, see what I mean about all the cables are in right in its own way. This one really is an absolute piglet to work on. You know, you get those days when you should have just left everything alone. It's a bit like that today. Right, okay, good. That's on there now. So we're in there. I mean, the other side of the coin, despite my complaining, is when things go back where they're supposed to come from, it's hugely satisfying. But getting to that stage in the first place can be quite frustrating. Okay, that's in, and that's back in. So, as I say, the flywheel and the motor turning okay. Right, then we've got six cables to solder back into place. So first things first, try and line up. There we go. Right, good. Okay, so here's ready for the screws, and I know that one was the one that turned to cheese, so we'll put him back in. We'll put him back in first in there. And two went here. So we're just getting this board back on. Everything else is sort of serviced inside. When I say serviced, we've changed the belt, put some rubber renew on the idler tyres, lubricated a few things, given it a clean the heads. Right. Just bear with me while I find that one more screw to go in here. Actually, no, that was the screw that goes in the back case, that's right. Remember I said right at the very beginning that sometimes some of the screws go straight in, and that's the one that goes, that's the machine screw that goes into there later. Okay. Sanity check complete. Right, so we'll just nip these up. So the circuit board is in the correct, screws are all correct in there. Right, next job. Basically what we need to do now is just solder everything back into place. But I think what I might just do is get the cassette unit itself back in first. and then we'll come back and then get everything back in place from there. So that's in. And I just want to make sure that it's on the right place on the switch, because sometimes if you're not careful, what will happen is you need to make sure you engage the selector underneath onto the switch so that that operates correctly. Good. Right, next thing then, let's get this screwed back in and get the thing soldered up. So now we just screw these two mechanism screws back in. Probably slightly out of sight, I apologise, but right. Okay, and we assume everything else works. Big risk to assume anything, I know, but nonetheless we do. So in terms of the cables for the heads, I think I believe they were all under here, and threaded through this a ways. And then of course we've also got these two to go back on here. Right, we'll go and get this soldering iron warmed up. Just triple check the location of the head points on here, and I'll be right back. Well, I've actually moved on to the cleaning side now, but I just wanted to explain a couple of things that we've just done on the back cover. You might recall it was absolutely disgusting and filthy before, so we've got the old toothbrush with some soapy water, cleaned all of that, and then used some auto care kind of vinyl cleaner to polish the plastic up itself. But then with regard to the aerial, do you remember I said at the beginning that the aerial was intact, and that was quite a nice feature that we can still, you know, it's a good salvageable feature. So I've just taken a tiny bit of a bend out of the aerial that was in there. Also tightened it up on the bottom end just to retain it. It was slightly loose, and also once I got the aerial fully extended, it wasn't staying in place, so we've just nipped the screw up a bit there, and as you can see, it's holding its position in any angle that I want to put it in. And I've also done the old aluminium foil trick as well, just to polish the aerial, and so now it slides, it retracts and works beautifully. So that's the back panel done, and onwards to the main unit itself. And we do have to, of course, remove any sort of necessary knobs and switches just to give them a good clean. You can see they're pretty grotty, so they do need to be removed really to get in properly and give them a good scrub. So that's the next job. And so here she is, just a couple of hours later and a little bit of elbow grease. She's almost as good as new. I'm so glad that I didn't break her for parts now. Just needed some TLC really. Fundamentally, it just needed a deep clean, a fresh belt, a bit of treatment to the idler rubbers. I've cleaned the heads, serviced the radio switches, cleaned all the knobs, polished up the aerial and tightened that up a little bit, but just odds and sods really. So it's been an absolute bargain really. don't get me wrong, quite often you can buy things on eBay that you think are a bargain and they turn out to be a proper little box of horrors. So it's quite a nice surprise to actually get one that you think is just going to be complete junk and turns out to be a little gem, really. It did actually cost me £6.50, full disclosure in terms of price, for the postage. Ironically, they normally, that's probably about as much as you'd pay for a small radio cassette like this for postage. So I paid kind of over the odds for post and packing, but only 99 pence in the auction for the actual unit itself. So I think all things considered, that's a bit of a bargain, and it'll either live around the place, keeping me company, but I've got a whole bunch of other stuff anyway that also keeps me company here. Lots of broken old radio cassettes to work on. So I may actually pass this on now to a new owner for a very sensible price, to be fair, just to get her moved on so someone else can enjoy her. And thank you very much indeed for watching. I've got a whole bunch of different stuff to work on at the moment. Radio cassettes, big old boom boxes, 8-track recorders, all kinds of things. So as I say, thanks again for watching. Please do subscribe, hit the notifications bell for updates, and I shall be back soon. Take care. Goodbye.